共建“一带一路”倡议提出10周年，他称赞这一倡议富有远见，成果显著，为本国资源禀赋和历史人文感到骄傲。他表示，希望各国相互尊重，命运与共。肯尼亚总统威廉·鲁托在内罗毕接受高端访谈独家专访，敬请收看。
关注国际焦点，洞察世界风云。大家好，欢迎收看本期高端访谈，我是王冠。我们现在所在的位置是肯尼亚首都内罗毕，在我身后的总统府，我们对话本期节目的嘉宾肯尼亚总统威廉·鲁托。肯尼亚是中国在东非的第一大贸易伙伴，双边贸易为两国民众的生活带来了哪些实实在在的改变？在肯尼亚境内的蒙内铁路为何被许多人视作是中非“一带一路”合作的模范项目？中国在非洲大陆上的第一所孔子学院正是于2005年开设在这里，肯尼亚首都内罗毕。两边的语言和文化交流如何拉近着两国的民心？让我们一起在对话中寻找答案。President Ruto, great to finally see you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, my good friend, and welcome to Kenya.
Talking about your visit to China to attend this third ever BRI Forum for International Cooperation, how do you look at the significance of the BRI and also this forum?
The Belt and Road Initiative, which has seen a program that now involves close to 155 countries globally and is set to maybe, I think, almost 70% of the world's population is part of this conversation. It has 3 elements. Number one, we are going to have a conversation about sharing on experiences. Number 2, we are going to have a conversation about how do we leverage on what has been achieved to even build a better tomorrow that leaves nobody behind. And of course, talking to the private sector. To me, I have a whole forum to engage with private sector players who are looking for opportunities in Kenya and in our continent. Because as you are aware, the African continent is a continent of the future.
The youngest continent anywhere in the world, demographic-wise?
Absolutely.
President Ruto, on both a conceptual level as well as a practical level, how do you look at the value, the merits of this Belt and Road Initiative, which was initially, of course, a concept, a notion, transpiring into numerous projects and action plans around the world today, 10 years on? How do you look at all this?
I think it was visionary. How do we build current infrastructure, road, rail, digital infrastructure, to support trade in the 21st century, building on the experience of what happened centuries back. So I think from concept, there are now tangible projects, measurable outcomes that we can see. For example, in Kenya, the SGR, when we were having a conversation about SGR, it looked far-fetched. Today, we have cargo, we have passenger on the SGR, we have real tangible outcomes out of the SGR. So we have transited from the idea, the vision, into reality.
Talking about the Nairobi-Mombasa SGR project, first of all, have you ever taken a ride on the train yourself?
Yes.
What was it like?
Yes. Oh yes, it's quite an experience. And many of the people who have taken, in fact, the challenge we now have is that for you to get onto the SGR, you need maybe a week's booking in advance.
Wow.
You cannot wake up in the morning and get a seat on the SGR.
There's a lot about the occupancy.
Yeah. So I think that's the experience that we have. And it's no longer Mombasa to Nairobi. We now have it all the way to Naivasha. And among the conversations we will be having with other countries is how other countries beyond Kenya, Uganda, DRC, Congo-Brazzaville, are also thinking about the same. How do we connect the East from the West? So other countries are also looking at what can they learn from Kenya and how can they be part of this great success.
下午2点，随着一声清脆的汽笛声，由蒙巴萨开来的列车准时抵达内罗毕站。机务调度中心里，调度员正盯着电脑屏幕，仔细监测着列车的运行状况。这条铁路已经安全运营超过2300天了。
我们在调度中心主要工作是保证安全。我们用的系统叫 CTC 系统，目前是最先进的调度列车指挥运行系统。
CTC 调度集中系统来自中国，蒙内铁路由中国企业承建，于2017年建成通车。它连接了肯尼亚首都内罗毕和东非第一大港口蒙巴萨，全长大约480公里。沿线共开通了33个站点。作为“一带一路”倡议的重要成果之一，蒙内铁路为肯尼亚创造了超过7.4万个就业岗位，培养出2800余名高素质铁路专业技术和管理人才，为当地的社会经济发展做出了巨大贡献，也为民众的生活带来诸多便利。
蒙内铁路被认为是整个非洲大陆上最现代化的铁路之一，而且它的上座率非常高啊，常年保持在95%以上，所以它带来的一个情况就是经常是一票难求。这个蒙内铁路的运营负责人告诉我们，在肯尼亚的节假日、周六周日的时间，经常是第一天放出来票啊，第二天就一抢而光。
The trip is okay. We enjoy the ride. We have the best cruise.
And the safety and the hospitality, the staffs, even the speed.
Nisikize mi rafiki yangu, nisikize mi, hadithi za reli ya SGR ni nyingi, imeleta urafiki kwetu na matumaini ya kila mtu. Wananchi wetu watakuwa wachangamfu.
President Ruto talking about bilateral relations. Kenya opened the first Confucius Institute anywhere in Africa. China established ties with Kenya 2 days after the independence of Kenya. And China was actually the 4th country anywhere in the world to open an embassy in Nairobi after again your independence. Bilateral trade tripled in the past 10 years. What do you think all this said about the state of affairs with our relationship, and how would you characterize the current state of China-Kenya ties?
The statistics you have given from Confucius Institute, from opening your embassy 2 days after our independence, from the bilateral relations escalation 3 times in the last 10 years, and all the relationship that we have built between leaders and people in Kenya and between Kenya and China speaks to a very strong bond of friendship, of relationship that goes beyond the ordinary structures of government, but goes down to people-to-people relationship, not just government, private sector, business, investment, and people-to-people relations. We have a deep relationship around culture, around what we celebrate, our humanity, and it just confirms that Kenya and China have been friends, and that friendship has not stagnated. It's been growing, and it is set to grow even more going into the future. And it is part of the reason why I'll be traveling to China, to build and cement and consolidate that relationship that has been built by the leaders who came before us, the people who came before us. And it is our opportunity between President Xi and myself to build on that foundation and take our countries to the next level.
Mr. President, talking about bilateral trade of our two countries in the past 10 years, trade between China and Kenya grew by 200%. In other words, it tripled in the past 10 years, up from $2.84 billion in 2012, all the way to $8.52 billion in 2022. How do you think that has benefited people on both sides?
First, it speaks to the robust relationship between our two countries. I think if there is a country in Africa where China has a friend, demonstrated by what you've just said, it is Kenya. And it speaks to the Kenyan work ethic. It speaks to the Kenyan private sector. It speaks to the Kenyan government and officials working together with their Chinese counterparts. And if you look critically, there is a growing investment capital that is coming to Kenya. Originally, it was based on trade. It was based on goods and services, but now it's slowly moving towards investment. I mean, many Chinese companies are beginning to find Kenya as a favorable investment destination.
Talking about our bilateral relations, it's about optics sometimes, reality versus myths. Mr. President, as you realize this, as you probably know this better than many, for example, according to Kenya's National Treasury and Economic Planning Ministry, Kenya's debt stands at a little over $6 billion as of March 2023, where Chinese loans accounted for some 17% of its total external public debt. However, if you read news from the Western media news sources, the sense would be that it's as if debt is the defining issue of our two countries. How do you feel about that?
Well, as you've said yourself, there is myth, there is rumor, there is perception, and then there is reality. The reality is that China is not our largest debt holder. We have huge relationships with the World Bank, with IMF, with European Union, with the US, with many other destinations. And the same way the relationships are mutual with others, it is mutual between China and Kenya. And our relationship is based on win-win. We are able to negotiate for ourselves what we think is balanced and fair to the people of Kenya and to our partners. We don't believe in taking advantage of anybody, and we don't allow others to take advantage of us. We know what we want, and we choose our friends, and we choose the people we work with. And just as we have a relationship with others, we have a solid, practical, mutually beneficial relationship with China.
How do you see the value of cultural and people-to-people bonding and exchanges in helping the two sides empathizing with each one another?
Culture is a very strong bond between people. It builds a sense of belonging. It builds bridges beyond what other structures of either governance or economy can do. And the setup of the Confucius Institute in Kenya was solely because of the people-to-people relations between Kenya and China. That beyond trade, beyond business, beyond all the hard numbers, there is a soul, a people that have a culture, that have a destiny, that have a tradition, that we celebrate who we are. And that has given us the basis upon which we have built very strong relationships with countries like yours, like China.
Mr. President, China has been over the years also practicing thought leadership, if you will, respecting countries around the world, saying that they should have their own approaches, adapting to their own circumstances. As an outsider, how do you look at the Chinese approach towards modernization and also the Chinese proposals over the years, for example, the Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative, and also Global Civilizations Initiative?
As you've said correctly, we are all different. We choose different paths to development. We choose different paths to where we want to go, but we all have a common destiny. We respect other nations and their culture and their tradition and their choices. The same way we defend our own choices as a country also and as a people. We have learned quite a lot from China and the way they've done their, the way they've run their development. They have contributed immensely to some of the initiatives you have mentioned, whether it is BRI, whether it is GDI, whether it is the security initiative. They have contributed to global progress in different aspects. And we appreciate that China does not seek to impose what they think is right on other people. The same way, we as Kenyans, we don't want to impose what we think is right on others. We have shared values, we have shared principles with different people, and we respect the choices of others to choose how they want to be who they are. You know, China's development has been phenomenal. I mean, and we appreciate that. It's because of the choices they have made. It has taken them where we are.
Kenya has a lot to offer to the world as well, Mr. President. Upon entering your country, there has been such a thing as a plastic ban, right, enacted since many, many years ago. Talk to us about the urgency that you often refer to when it comes to the fight against climate change, and how do you see China as being a partner?
We did make a deliberate, intentional decision as a country to chart the way towards a much more sustainable future, both for ourselves and globally. And it has continuously informed Kenya's position. We are part of the first conference of parties that started the journey towards what we have today as the COP space. We have made contributions in the space around environment and habitats, and that's why Kenya hosts the United Nations Environmental Program and also Habitat. In fact, we have the only UN headquarters in the Global South, and it speaks to what we believe in as a country and as a people, especially on matters of environment. And it's the same reason that led us to ban plastic. It is the same reason that we are great proponents of the interventions around climate change. It is the same reason why Kenya hosted the first ever climate summit for the African continent. And it speaks to our commitment and belief that there is something we can do about nature, humanity, and having a planet that tomorrow we can hand over to generations that will come after us. And speaking about what we can do with China, we appreciate that China is investing in renewable energy. It's demonstrable, the journey you have made towards, making a contribution, and a big one, towards the road to renewable energy. It is it's common knowledge. Some of the infrastructure around renewable energy, whether you're talking about solar panels, and then all the infrastructure around renewable energy, have been developed in China. China has made a contribution towards assisting the world to come up with interventions, infrastructure, equipment, technology that support climate action and climate solutions, including green energy. We have a complementary relationship. China spearheads technology around renewable energy. Kenya is a frontline state on advocating for climate action that enables us to unlock the huge potential that we have, especially in the African continent, on renewable energy. Whether you're talking about solar, geothermal, wind, hydro, that is the space where Kenya is pushing.
肯尼亚，一个多彩多姿的东非国家， 它东临索马里，南接坦桑尼亚，西连乌干达，北与埃塞俄比亚、南苏丹交界，东南濒临印度洋。赤道横贯其东西，东非大裂谷纵贯其南北。肯尼亚是人类发源地之一，境内曾出土约250万年前的人类头盖骨化石。得天独厚的地理位置和气候条件，使得这个国度同时拥有壮丽的自然美景和灿烂的人文历史。每年7至9月，东非草原上的动物大迁徙，更是让人感叹大自然的震撼与生命的奇迹。
One final question, Mr. President, a personal question, if you don't mind. You often talk about the poverty of your youth, recalling the days where you went barefoot for many, many years. You got your first proper pair of shoes at age, what, 15?
14.
14?
When I first went to secondary school.
Wow. And of course, you sold peanuts and chickens on the side of the street to make money. And later on, you obtained a PhD in plant ecology, became a parliamentarian, a deputy president and president. How would you recall those days? What did those childhood hardship days mean to you and to the man that you later become?
I think there are 3 aspects to this. One aspect is where you start doesn't define you as a person. Learning from the little things, the reality of the moment when I grew up, informed to a great extent the person I became. That it was possible to overcome the challenges of growing up as a child. It was possible to go to secondary school and wear shoes for the first time and be in class with children whose parents were much more endowed. But being in class, we became as good, maybe sometimes better, than other students. Went on to run, and I ran for the first time. And by God's grace, I was elected first time. And I ran against giants, against people who had stature, who had status, who had currency. So that helped understand a lot better, contextualize people's needs, what can be done, what should be done, how, and help me along the journey. That's number 1. Number 2, it also gave me the opportunity to have a broader view of what humanity is. That today you can be here, tomorrow you can be in a different place. A child from any background could go to school, an undergraduate, a postgraduate, and a PhD, that it's possible. And thirdly, it became an inspiration. You know, I see myself as an inspiration to many children. I can tell you, there are many children who look at me and say, I must make it. And they are not few. And I have taken also the liberty to mentor many other young people, many leaders. And my hope is that I can mentor leaders that will be better than myself.
What a story and what an inspiration. President William Ruto, His Excellency, thank you so much for all this.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
My very best wishes to China Media Group for visiting Kenya and sharing moments with me. Your coming speaks volumes of care to Kenyans and Africans. We look forward to building on this relationship for humanity's benefit.
整个采访过程当中，鲁托总统认为共建“一带一路”倡议充分考虑到了非洲当地的实际需求，为包括肯尼亚在内的国家带来了实实在在的改变。好，感谢您收看本期高端访谈，我是王冠，我们下期再会。
See yourself the miracles, and the sin will make you please, yeah. My hometown, town, yeah, my hometown.